You're listening to the Valley Current.
No, Bob, I came up with a brilliant idea for a whole new series. We call it Lieff on Life.
I saw that.
Lieff on Life, and we trademark it. I think it's a great series. It's a really good idea because you've got big life lessons. How do you negotiate with an ex-spouse? You could spend a fortune on that topic alone.
I've been practicing it over and over again until I get it right, and I don't know. But hey, but I wanted to mention something. Two things. Number one, you sent out your achievement getting the what do you call it? The Martindale-Hubbell.
Yeah, that used to be important years ago.
So who were all those people that congratulated you? You got.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, a bunch of people replied. There are a bunch of different people because it gets attached to a list, and the list is like people that I've invited on the podcast or people that have said they want to come on. So I said, hey, I'm still legal. I'm still legit. I still have some credentials here. I figured they'd say yes to the podcast.
Well, the one I got most recently is my 50-year anniversary of being a member of the California Bar or something like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Most others. That's a big achievement.
They say there are only 11 still alive or something. I don't know.
That's true, Bob. That's true. And you know what? The one who lives the longest gets the biggest prize. It's true.
We figured that out, Susan. I was saying that to you. I said the one that lives the longest wins, and I do believe that. So that was one thing. The other thing I saw you said was really, really interesting about Dick Alexander. You know, he was my partner.
Yes, I do. I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
I got a kick out of that, out of the Ukrainian Wonder Woman. And of course, my grandparents came from Ukraine as well. And she wasn't Cabrazer. She was more, as they would say in Ukraine, more Zoftic by far, more full-bodied than Cabrazer. But is she the one that he was traveling in Europe with? Somebody told me he was he left his wife.
I thought there was a generalization that he's attracted to people that have any DNA from the Ukraine. He's attracted to those people.
You know what? I hired him at Belli's, and when I hired him, his name was Dick Alexka.
Right.
It wasn't Alexander.
Right, he changed his name. I know that.
How do you know that?
I knew that. I talked to him years ago, and I said, Dick Alexander, what's Alexander? He says, I changed my name. He told me.
He changed his name. And I started a little campaign at that time at Belli's to oppose the motion. I said, it's screwing up everything here. We have you down, your initials are R, whatever it was, RPO, and now you want to make it RPA. It's messing up the firm.
Yes.
Anyway, so then he left with me. And you know Wilcox is another weirdo.
No, I didn't know Wilcox. No.
So they left with me and we formed Lieff. So it was going to be Lieff, Wilcox, and Alexander. But Alexander says, wait a minute. If we make it Lieff, Alexander, Wilcox, it's LAW. Good idea.
Wow. So that's good. No, here in Florida, there's a big firm. They are on TV all the time, and they own the dial pound LAW on the phone. Pound LAW. If you send the text message, it immediately connects you to the law firm. The law firm is not Murphy and Murphy.
Morgan and Morgan.
Morgan and Morgan. Man, they are on TV every day.
Are they?
They own every billboard. They own just about every billboard going up and down the freeways. I swear, those guys spend a fortune on advertising, and they gave a lot of money to Biden. They gave $500,000 to Biden. It's in the newspaper. They gave a big amount to Biden.
Well, they are pushing themselves all over, pushing themselves into the kind of cases that we do, the class action cases. Morgan, I don't know them they kind of came to life after I backed off, but Morgan and Morgan, yes, I'm aware of that. And
their byline, Bob, their byline is pound law. That's all. Just dial pound law. You're done. That's it. They take it from there. They handle it right from there.
we set up 50 years ago when people actually used cables, and our cable address was LAWSFO. Great.
Oh, that's great.
Great.
That's
yeah,
great.
you know that, Sue? LAWSFO, Law San Francisco. That was really great. But then they stopped using cable. So, and then Alexander had the license plate. I think it was LAWSFO. Anyway, and we had a good phone number too. It was Sutter 88000. We had a good phone number, a good cable address. We got off to a great start. But then what happened was my friend of mine in New York, a lawyer friend of mine, had a dope case in California, a guy named Scully, and Richard Alexander took on the case. We got all of you listening, Sue? Of a $15,000 fee, and Alexander spent about a year doing nothing else but that case. I had to get rid of him. Wilcox did very little. Wilcox he was married to a Chinese lady who was about 15 years older. She was a millionaire, her family in Hong Kong. So in any event, he didn't have to work. So they both left, and I had to inherit the line of credit at Commonwealth Bank.
Are you always the guy that ends up holding the bag? Are you always?
I got so many bags around here.
I can't believe it, Bobby. You've survived. You've survived holding all those bags. It's amazing.
Well, there's a certain amount of humor in it, and a little bit of bittersweetness. And I'm all for bittersweet. I think bittersweet is a very good thing. That's the way life should be, bittersweet. And
are you kidding?
Yes, it's got the sweetness.
Thanks a lot. I don't want any bitterness.
Oh, she did.
I have enough trouble.
Oh God, you hear her?
It's an advanced view of bittersweet. I think I understand what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying.
That's why your mood swings.
She says that's why my mood swings. Anyway, so yeah, Alexander. So the lady that works for him, that's terrific. And he's a hard worker. He is a hard worker.
He does. He works hard. He works a lot of cases. I think that guy builds around. Or if he kept track of his time, it's probably 3,000 hours a year, easy.
Yes.
Probably 3,000 easy, right?
I'm just thinking aloud. What do most lawyers do? 2,000?
Yeah, 2,000 is a pretty solid year.
Well, in the contingent fee business, we don't bill, but we do keep time records because the courts require that. And I noticed in my roundup case that Elizabeth she has over 1,000 hours now in the roundup case. Wow. That's a lot of time. I have about 700 hours.
Just for this year?
Yeah, because she only got into it last January or so. Yeah, just for 2020. Yeah, 2020.
So that's like half her year.
That's it's like half a normal person's year, but she probably, God only knows, she probably bills 3,000 hours or something like that. And she's spending a lot of time on opioids. I mean, it's great though. Opioids and Roundup, two big mass tort cases. So anyway, that's what she's doing. And I'm trying to do more ranching, right, Sue? We're trying to do.
We're farming.
Ranching, yeah.
We hope that it makes sense financially, so we're not paying to work.
We're not paying to work.
So
we'll be doing at Gretchen's.
So before we get started, I thought I should give you a funny story, which is that, you know that you've moved to Florida when you've changed all your magazine subscriptions to your Florida address, and the magazines start arriving. So one of the magazines that arrives, which I religiously read, which very few lawyers read, is the New York Review of Books.
I get that here. Yeah,
it's got some really great writing. But what's very interesting about it is it's got classifieds that are really funny.
The personals
are really funny. So if you look at the personals, this past magazine, I'm going to bring it on the screen. You're going to crack up because
I got it right here.
You got it right here. Well, here's I'm bringing it up, but at the top it says single white male, mid-80s, multilingual, practicing trial lawyer.
Oh my God.
Seeks Ann Arbor, Detroit remote companion to talk books, movies, music, and politics. Now, what's wrong with that sentence? If someone's going to be a
practice?
remote companion, why do they need to be in Ann Arbor or Detroit? And he's got his name. He didn't even hide his name.
He doesn't drive. He doesn't drive. But he says remote companion.
Yeah, remote. He's got remote here. He's got the word remote, but it says seeks Ann Arbor, Detroit. I guess he must be in Ann Arbor, which is where the University of Michigan is. I don't know him. It's someone Goodman at Goodman and Kalahar. I don't know who that is. I don't know what that is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, Goodman. Maybe that's his name. Yeah. No,
that's his name. He's the partner of the firm. He's still trying cases. So let's bring up, just to show you sort of how quickly you can get information. Someone looking at him said Goodman and Kalahar. Kalahar is Kalahar. So I'm just going to bring it up. I thought you could pick it. It says the site can't be reached. I don't know if I typed the name wrong. Hold on.
Yeah.
Kalahar. No, Kalahar.com. K-A-L-A. Well, it's not there. So who knows what that means? The site's not coming up.
He's not going to get any women. He's not going to. How about this one? I like this one. Excellent Massage by Eva.
For every young, happy 85. If you're 85, maybe this is the right. But here's one that's good. Widowed Magravine seeks respite from coterie of sycophants. Enclose your most prurient poem.
Oh, my God. What does Markovine mean anyway?
It's like, a woman that's into the sensual arts kind of thing.
You know what that means, Markovine?
Magravine.
Well, I read a couple of those from the New York Review of Books to Susan because they are funny, and Wally subscribes to the New York Review of Books too. Yes. And the book reviews are really great, as you know, because they're more than just a book review. They can tell you the whole story, what was going on in that particular time, or the whatever, Croatians and whatever it is. There we go. Markovine, definite. The wife
of a Margrave. The wife of a Margrave. So let's look at Margrave.
1692, defined above, and from 1692.
The military governor, especially of a German border province, a member of the German nobility. So she's a wife, she's the widow of some German noble. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, like Klaus von Bülow, right?
Yeah, something like that. So that's what she's saying. Widowed. This is a little bit like restating the obvious. Widowed. She's no longer. He's dead, but he was a German noble.
Right.
And there's a coterie of sycophants. People that are sort of brown nosing her, and she's looking for the right guy to turn her on. Go figure that out. Yeah. So these two were together, by the way, which is kind of funny because sometimes they put them together as a way to make a statement. But a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know that the New York Review of Books has some really interesting writing. Like if you look at the actual writing, this is the classified. It's got some of the best writing on politics. For example, they've got a whole story this week about William Barr, who's our chief legal officer of the United States. I mean, he is the responsible person. He's supposedly, as Attorney General, the enabler in chief. They do a good picture, a good caricature of him there.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bob, what I wanted to spend some time on is, do you think the legal profession is in the midst of disruption? Because there's an article that I saw this week that made me think that, wow, there's a lot going on, and management consultants are now starting to say these business guys don't rely on them anymore because they get everything off the internet. And they're like, you management consultants were supposed to come up with ideas, but I get my ideas for free. And you might say some of the same things about what clients think in terms of doing their own cases, but litigation and trial work is a very specialized expertise, and there's lots of landmines in the way. But you tell me what you think about what's happening to maybe the average practice of law. I think it's hard to be a country lawyer anymore, unless you might say, you work for free, so there's no competition for that if you're working for
Well, I would answer it this way. First of all, with respect to country lawyer, I do know something about that because among the various things I've done was up in Sonoma. I went up to Sonoma and I opened a storefront office. I'm in the town in a little tiny building that I bought. It was a small building. And I had a big desk like this one here. It was, I bought another desk up there. It had been at the Southern Pacific Railroad. Anyway, but I set it up so that my office was in the storefront. So you look, oh, I have a picture. Where the hell is it? Oh, I have a picture here. This is great. I just remembered. I don't know if you can see it, but I have a picture of the little office, and it was law offices of Robert Lieff here. And it was just this little building.
What?
Like
And you didn't keep that building? You sold that building?
I sold the building and I moved to another building that had bought a larger building, but this one was great. So I sat in the window and I had the secretary sitting in the back. But so I was sitting there, people would come by, they'd wave, they'd walk in. How you doing, counselor? Good morning. This is after I had left Belleye after 7 years there. And after 3 years or so in 5 years in San Francisco, and I kept my little office in San Francisco on Sansom Street. But in Sonoma, I drive my pickup truck. I went there each day. I went to the post office first, picked up the mail out of a post office box. And anyway, handled all kinds of things, contingent things. And, dog bites, I specialized in dog bites, monkey bites, a lot of bite cases. I also did some railroad crossing cases where stolen guys are driving the cars or walking across the railroad tracks and get killed. I had a collection of interesting cases. And so then I needed help. That's when Cabrezzo came along in 1978 to help me in these cases I was doing. At the same time, I was doing that ended up doing 3 different huge commercial class action cases in Honolulu. So I had kind of 3 lives, that storefront, and I was doing the Honolulu cases and doing San Francisco. So I had an opportunity to, in my little career, work on Wall Street, which had Bourne Park, work for Belleye, work on Wall Street, start my own firm. I've done it all. And then for a year and a half, just before I got the job at Belleye, I don't know if I told you this, I worked for Price Waterhouse because I also am pretty good at accounting and tax preparation. So I'm just going to tell you one. I'm sorry to digress so much, but this is Lieff on Life.
Lieff on Life. This is Lieff on Life.
Yeah.
This is the first episode of Lieff on Life. I agree. This is the first episode.
So I had the job at Price Waterhouse in the tax department, and I did tax returns. I wrote memos. I did research, and I was working on one thing. We had a client, Irene Best. I'll never forget it. And her family started Caterpillar Tractor Company, so she had a lot of stock with Caterpillar Tractor. So one time I was trying on my own to kind of reconcile her sales and purchases of these thousands and thousands of shares of Caterpillar Tractor stock. And I realized in the course of doing this that she had had a number of sales that weren't reported. They had not been reported. So I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get some brownie points. So I went to see the managing partner and I said, I want to tell you something. I just found that our good client, Irene Best, she did not report the sale of significant shares of stock. So he said, oh, very interesting. Nice work, Bob. And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to get a nice office or something. So the next day, the personnel manager calls me in and I got fired, man. They fucking fired me. They fired me because I got the scoop on them. I didn't do it on purpose, but they were dead meat because they fraudulently allowed her to sell stock and not report it.
Whoa.
And I was so naive. It wasn't until many years later that I had a good friend who was with what's now called Ernst & Young, I guess. Anyway, yeah, I told him, they said, don't you know they had to get you out of there. They had to get you out immediately.
Right.
Because when I got fired, they never told me why. I just looked at the guy. And anyway, So
You had a whistleblower. You had a whistleblower case there, Bob. You had a whistleblower case, but you didn't realize it.
I
You had a
didn't
big
realize it.
whistleblower case.
I did not realize it, and but I have done my best over the years to always include Price Waterhouse if they were involved in a case and to sue their ass over and over again. Anyway,
but people don't think those big accounting firms do anything wrong. They think the big accounting firms are completely straight up, right?
Terrible. They're terrible, and they do well. Look what happened to Anderson, whatever it was, down in the Enron case.
Yeah,
you know, they went out of business.
Yeah,
and it went from the big 8 to the big 4. So you know, the big accounting firms are terrible. And so anyway, I got off the track here, but yeah, storefront lawyer and doing that kind of thing. That was great.
But you see, the thing I think that's interesting about this topic of disruption is if you have a lot of trust, you're going to be able to do really well with clients, you know, because they're used to the fact that you can have a lot of trust with them. They trust you. You're going to do many things. But if you look at the standard kind of management consulting, you could argue that law firms kind of do. This article that I sent you put up a few pieces of data like this curve of the number of MBAs since 1970 on an annualized basis. This is annual graduates with MBAs. It used to be 25,000 in the early 70s per year. It's gone up to nearly or over 200,000 MBAs a year that are being churned out of business school. And they're saying, well, what are the 4 functions of consulting? And of course, I changed consulting into law practice in looking at this and say, how close is this to also mentioning law practice? Well, one, you gather information and data. You do that in researching a case. You bring certain expertise to bear on the problem. Yes, that's the same. You might actually have some good insights as well to solve the problem, you know, to raise the issue and solve it like you did, you were mentioning you did at Price Waterhouse. And then you execute on some plan. But the problem is a lot of management consultants don't do execution anymore because they think that's dirty. They like to do strategy. They like to do the information gathering, the application of expertise, and some sort of set of recommendations. But ask them to actually get in the trenches and do the work to solve the problem. And they're like, are you kidding me? Go find some mechanic to do that. I just gave you the roadmap to fix the car. I'm not going to get under the hood and dirty my fingernails. That's for some mechanic to do, or that's for one of your own people to do, I suppose. And I think the story of this article is, unless the MBAs change and actually roll up their sleeves, they're going to be disrupted by automation that's going to gather the information itself, generate and apply some expertise, and maybe even make recommendations, maybe even automatically make some recommendations, because we're seeing some of that begin to happen. If you look at what happens with tax returns now, all this automated software makes a bunch of recommendations when it goes through your data. The same thing is probably going to happen in the legal area. Anyway, that's what makes me wonder about, well, maybe in the class action case, that's just impossible because you don't really have a client. You have a case. You have a problem that's not going away until someone comes up with a solution. And then, of course, if you engineer a great solution, you got a political problem in trying to get all the other lawyers to agree to it, because they may not all agree to it, like the solution you had in Roundup as an example, right?
Well, yes. And I do think that it's an interesting concept, the execution aspect of it. I think they're almost right to the extent that, oh, there's the exection. Okay.
Right. They're saying there's a lot of smaller firms that'll still do execution, but the big firms kind of want to do more like insight. That's where most of them are, like in here. They want to do, you know, the gathering of the information they almost don't want to do, but they want to bring expertise to bear and provide some insight. And those are all the big guys. And then the smaller guys up here will do the execution. But even that to some degree.
I think in at least the class action business, the execution now is done by what we refer to as contract lawyers or staff lawyers. These are people who do not want to make a career out of it. They don't want to be entrepreneurial. they want to work, they want to go home, and they want to spend the weekends, you know, in the national parks or sitting around with their kids and that sort of thing. So those are great people to do the execution. So I think execution really is not the most important part. I think the creativity, the part that comes in at the beginning of thinking up the ideas, is really the important one.
Well, you would say picking out the problem, because there's down here in the public domain space of all this information. Every time you pick up a newspaper, you must see a new class action case, Bob. Every time you pick up a newspaper, you probably see something that needs to be solved.
All too often, and people call me and they say, you know, I went to buy, I don't know, something in the drugstore, and this is what happened, and isn't that a class action? And I say, well, you know, that idea is not a bad one, but to put the whole thing together would take a lot of money. I've had lawyers, you know, this is a big issue that comes up. Lawyers will call and they'll say to me, I have a great idea for a class action. The American Express did this on my credit card, and I think there are, you know, billions of people having American Express cards, and we could have a class action. And I say, you know, that's great, but anybody could come up with that, and you're not going to get a referral fee for coming up with the class action idea. Fortunately, it's not even allowed. I just recently had a situation in Boston where one of my colleague firms paid somebody $4 million, characterizing it as a referral fee. Well, there are no referral fees. You're not allowed to do that. So in any event, or somebody, I remember somebody once called and said, you know, my wife took these pills, whatever, birth control, whatever they were, and they're very dangerous. I said, how's your wife? Well, she's fine. Forget it. Be happy. She's fine, you know.
Right.
So in any event, but the execution aspect of it, you know, that pyramid, I'm not too sure if it was not upside down, because the execution in my business, at least the class action business, the execution takes the largest amount of time. And that's why you have the contract lawyers. And that's why too often the contract lawyers in these big class action financial cases are doing what is known as confirmatory discovery. They're going through millions and millions of documents to look for something, you know, and they're sitting here looking at screens all day, either sitting at a little carrel in our office, or working from home doing confirmatory discovery. And so the point of it all is that it puts in hours, countless hours, and builds up what we refer to as the lodestar in these cases.
Right.
So,
and I guess to some degree there's a desire to do that, because if you don't do that, you can't get a fee from a judge, right?
Well, yes, because what happens is the judge first, there is in the Ninth Circuit, there is a standard in class actions of a 25% fee. But the judges, and Judge Ko, that the Korean woman judge, you know, she's very active. She does a lot of these Silicon Valley class action cases, and she's very good at it. So she says, okay, and the Ninth Circuit has also said that the trial court can do a cross check against the 25% contingency, and that's a lodestar cross check. Lodestar, your hours times your billing rate.
Right.
So what's your lodestar? And the Ninth Circuit has said, okay, you could get up to maybe four times your lodestar. But then you get to a case like Roundup, which is so complicated and so different that I'm sure we're going to ask for more than four times the lodestar. And it's not a case where you're building up lodestar with contract lawyers. That's not what we're doing. We're doing creative work at the top end. And that is going back to your pyramid. That is more consistent with the pyramid. So you're doing the heavy duty work and not the little bit of confirmatory discovery type stuff.
Right.
So anyway, it's interesting, but yeah, I think that now with working remotely because of this virus, we're all going to get into the mindset of just feeling that this is a better way to do things. You don't need the brick and mortar. You don't need the big offices. You could do this wherever you are. Look at Dick Alexander, though. I looked at what you sent, And my God, he's got an office address in San Francisco and in San Jose and maybe even New York. I'm not sure. But we should talk because Lieff Cabraser has an office now in Munich. So now we're an international
right.
class action.
Right. That's right. Your name will be across Europe before your 85th birthday, Bob. It'll be all across Europe before your 85th birthday.
Yeah. And my friend Michael Hausfeld, with whom I had a conversation Friday, with whom I'm doing we're trying to do Volkswagen in Europe. He's got about 6 or 7 or 8 offices in Europe, and he was way ahead of everybody else. He and I wanted to do it together, but my partners didn't want to do it. So he went ahead and did it, struggled. The pioneers get shot in the back, and then later the people shooting them do the same thing and make money.
Right.
The guy out there first doesn't make money, except for maybe, I'm thinking aloud, in your area, Packard, Hewlett Packard. They were working out of a garage. And actually, Zuckerman and a lot of those guys
they weren't really first. The Zuckerberg was really not first. The original concepts for what Zuckerberg did were well understood by IBM years ago, and they patented a lot of. I'm kind of surprised they haven't sued Facebook yet, because they've got a ton of patents in the same area. Maybe most of them have all expired now. But I've got to go to my weekly service here, Bob, but I do want to wrap up having you think about Lieff on Life, because I do think that we're going to cover a lot of topics that are really broader than even law and broader than business, and along the lines of how do you make smart decisions, including when you're negotiating against your ex-wife, where we started this conversation. Because I have to say, I've not talked to my first wife left me for my next door neighbor. I think I told you that story. It was a very painful time. I don't think I've said one word to her since the day of the finality of the divorce. I have to give you a lot of credit that you could still talk to an ex-wife. I mean, bravo. I couldn't do it. I'm sure if Hollis were listening to this, maybe she will. She'll say, well, it's only because you're an asshole, Jack. If you weren't such an asshole, you would talk to me. Because now, of course, we have grandchildren together, because Danielle Anne-Marie's had a couple of kids, but Danielle had her first at the age of 37. And so the new grandchild in the family, so it's like a big deal going on. This kid was born in the midst of COVID in May, 2 months after the start of COVID. Everything's fine, things are great, but can you imagine being a mom in this period of life when you really can't go out, or you got to be really careful going out in San Francisco, by the way, in San Francisco.
Yeah, but that would give you reason to have more contact with your ex-wife, because you're sharing now a grandchildren.
In theory, it would give you more reason, but I don't know if I'm going to follow that advice from Lieff on Life. But you're probably right. Sooner or later, you have to make amends with everyone, it seems to me, if you can. You got to do that.
If you want to go to heaven, it's a good idea.
I got to get to Mass, though, to make sure I go to heaven. I got to end today. But talk to you next week, okay?
All right.
Sorry I was late
talking
today.
to you, Jack.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on the Valley Current.